Discovering possibilities and potential with passion every day. This is a TPPN production. Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode number 92, Photojournalism. This podcast is sponsored by Gadget Freeway. Check out all of their amazing gadgets and accessories over at gadgetfreeway.com. I'd like to thank them once again for the sponsorship and support of this podcast. One quick thing I forgot to record in the live show here is that Gadget Freeway has a 10% off sale. Just go to their website and purchase anything, and automatically 10% off up until September 24th. So it's ending this week, so catch it quick, catch it this week, and you can get 10% off anything on their site. So just wanted to add that in, and with that, let's get on back to the show. Before we move on with the rest of the podcast, I want to just share a quick apology here. I was recently alerted on Twitter that a bunch of the different chapters of the Bible that I've been recording for another project, another podcast, were accidentally posted in the iPad stream, the iPad Possibilities podcast stream. So that was a big shock to me. It's like, oops, big mistake here. So I pulled those out of the stream, and the problem is corrected, but many of you, I am sure, got those downloads, and I'm sorry if that was a problem for you, but it is now corrected and fixed, and I appreciate just being alerted through Twitter or whatever it is when hiccups like that happen. And I'm sorry once again. And with that, let's just get on to the rest of the show. And welcome once again to the live show. We do this show every Sunday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at iPadPossibilities.com. And tonight, John Finnan is joining me. How are you doing tonight, John?
Very good, Tim. How are you?
Doing great. I was trying a little pause there. I was trying to think of a different way to bring you in than how are you doing. So it seems like I'm always asking you that.
True, but it's old reliable.
Yep, exactly. So lots of things to talk about. So without further ado, let's just kind of jump into it. The first section here are just application updates. The first one's a big Uzu update that adds this autoplay mode. So if you just want to sit back and relax and enjoy the beautiful Uzu experience, you can just let that do that. It's magic. And once you add 4 fingers, or you can interact with it, I guess, up to 4 fingers to kind of enhance the autoplay. But once you do 5, it'll do the manual mode again. And then the other big one is external display support. So I'm not sure if you're an Uzu user, or are these exciting changes for you?
Yeah, they're certainly interesting. I don't do Uzu very often, but when I do, it's fun. I actually was showing off. I was with a couple of new iPad users last week, and that Uzu was one of the things I had to show off. So yep, it's good stuff.
It's a wonderful app, and I'm excited for the external display support, because that'll be, I think, kind of huge in certain markets that want to, I don't know, do Uzu performances. I think that'll be something in the future.
Yeah, well, it's certainly easier to share because you get a lot of fingers on the screen, and you kind of are covering up the screen a lot. So
yeah, that's true, because it's gonna be hard to. Yeah, that's a good point there too.
Yeah, so that'll be a big benefit for Uzu. It's interesting, the autoplay thing. I think that'll be interesting. I was
like a screensaver for your iPad.
Yeah, kind of. I was looking at an iPhone game, I guess, that was recently updated. I think it's called Wings Galaxy or something like that, where you can do some galactic flyby combat kind of thing. But there's also a explore mode on that, which just kind of goes through and flies through the galaxy or whatnot.
Yeah.
So those autoplay things are very nice in these very beautiful kinds of applications.
So, exactly. Right. Well, do you want to dive into the next app? Because this is one I know you're a big fan of. It's one that I used to be a big fan of, but don't really use anymore. It's Devin Think's Go app.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this. I guess it's been submitted and we're waiting for or it's in QA testing, so it should be available soon. So DevonThink, for those that don't know, is an information management system. It's kind of like a database on steroids. It's very good for storing all kinds of information, cross-referencing, tagging, organizing the information. And so now they have DevonThink to go, or will shortly have DevonThink to go, an app for the iPad that you can share those databases with the iPad. It seems like it's mostly geared toward looking up the information, although I think you can add some information to it, or maybe retag it, reclassify.
Yeah, there's a global inbox, I guess.
Right. That's typical with DevonThink, is to have a global inbox through all the various methods you have of putting stuff into DevonThink, whether you use a script to print to PDF or whether you cut pieces of web pages to it or whatever. So yeah, it's a good thing, and I'm glad to see it now. If we can only get my other last wish item, which is couple down on the list here that we'll talk about.
Okay, it is on the list here for today.
Yeah, okay. You have it on the list.
DevonThink to go will be $15 when it comes out, and it's a universal app, which is a nice thing, definitely. And I'll be curious to check it out. I still have the old. I don't have the current license. I got the old Pro Office license, but I'll have fun playing around with it. And the sync, I think, is just over your local Wi-Fi network. So I'm hoping they'll add some 3G support soon. So DevonThink Go, and the next one's kind of a cool one. I heard about this on I forget where I heard about this, but it's a kind of cool one. It's ABC My Generation Sync app. So the concept here is just for a single television show called My Generation on ABC, and it uses the iPad's microphone to tell you where you are in your in the show, and it will show you relevant information, polls, different just content as you're watching your show. So this doesn't matter if you're watching it live or not. So you could be watching it on Hulu, and it could do the same thing. And it's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it's a very cool idea. I think it's really progressive thinking and looking at really how, particularly the younger generation, deals with television. In that it's either on a DVR, or it's as you say, in Hulu or some other way on the network. And so it's really interesting, and I saw the little video that was associated with it. Now this My Generation show hasn't started yet. I think it starts September 23rd.
Yep, next week.
But it's a very interesting thing, and I guess the Nielsen folks are hoping to get a little bit of information. I'm not sure exactly what kind of information they'll get, but it looked a lot of fun, asking questions about the show, or what you thought about different characters on the show and different things like that. But really a smart way of doing that, really syncing up by the audio
track.
Drive
up viewer count?
I don't know that it will. It's kind of interesting that they're targeting this particular show, because I'm not sure.
I have no idea what the show's about.
Well,
I'll probably watch it.
I think it's about young folks, probably in your generation, not in my generation. But I don't know. I couldn't get a sense from watching the little thing whether it was a reality show or a situation comedy or what exactly it was. But it will certainly be interesting. I'm not sure that demographic are heavy iPad users.
Yeah, they're more the iPhone generation.
Yeah, so, but interesting nonetheless.
Do you think by next year, say fall 2011, the ABC app, which we all have, will just have this kind of stuff built into it rather than just a different app for each show you want to watch?
Well, that's an interesting question, because, there seems to be, I was listening to one of the shows on the Twit network recently, and they were talking a lot about having apps, particularly apps per show. So, they gave an example of like a Lost app, where you would watch the episodes in the app and do everything. So I guess it really depends upon how much movement to the internet television goes. So if a year from now, if television is still, not really penetrated.
If this is just a portal that just listens via the mic, I mean, why is it just my generation? I mean, is it feasible that this my generation could just be rebranded the ABC Listen app, where it just listens while you're watching ABC shows and just displays stuff?
Well, it certainly could, although I don't know if from a marketing standpoint that they would like to brand things with the show.
Oh, gotcha.
But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting thing, and I'll be interested to see where it goes.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on from there. Another big update. At least we kind of have an idea when the rest of the Omni Group apps will make their way to the App Store. Omni Outliner, it'll be Christmas present late Q4, and then Omni Plan in 2011. So it looks like they got a little bit more work to do, but it'll be a very polished app, I'm sure, when it arrives.
So this is my other dying need is Omni Outliner.
Yeah.
I had actually started some work in Omni Outliner, and then I had to do some traveling, and so I tried to get the outline onto my iPad, and that was not very good. and then I tried to recreate it in I actually tried two different of the outlining apps that I have on the iPad, and I got just very frustrated.
Yeah.
Because these apps are probably fine in some respects, but there's all the polish that Omni puts into their the Omni Group puts into their apps that are just not there, and I really miss that polish.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit longer, as I say. It's kind of an interesting time. It'll be the Christmas present of the year, along with your Steve Jobs said the white iPhone will evidently be coming out Christmas. I don't know.
All right.
And the next one, it's PlayOn is application that just came out, and I have no use for this because it's, I guess, Windows only is what I'm reading from this description here. But basically, it allows you to stream not just content on your machine, but Hulu and other different web content from Windows Box to your iPad, as well as PS3, PlayStation 3s and things like that. So a very interesting thing that's come out, and I actually got a review email of this a couple hours ago. I'll go over that review, I think, next week when we have a little bit more time, or on one of the other shows this week.
Yeah, I found this very interesting. Although it does seem like it's a subscriber service. Mm-hmm. It wasn't quite clear whether that was required.
$20 a month or $80 a year, I believe.
Yeah. So I think I've heard about this type of thing available on the PC before, and it's interesting. And before Hulu Plus, it was certainly a good thing to have to get some of this content that's otherwise not readily accessible. I'm too much a Mac person to really benefit from this. So
likewise, and it's kind of bizarre. I did not intentionally link these next two stories with this one. That it just kind of fell this way. But Microsoft is, I guess, looking at developing iPad apps. I don't know. That's from App Advice. I think we can kind of gloss over that.
Yeah, the interesting thing. I think this was actually tweeted by Paul Thurrott.
Yeah, the Windows Weekly guy.
Yeah, and it's a good thing. I can't imagine. Microsoft already makes the Bing app.
Yeah.
For iPhone that runs on the iPad, and it makes a lot of sense.
I'd love to see Microsoft Office on the iPad, even though I hate Microsoft Office, and I believe that it should just not exist because it's not good software in my experience with it. But everyone uses it, so you got to have it. So
yeah, I can't see that Microsoft Office would come down. One, because price, nobody's going to pay the outrageous price that it would need to be.
Well, say they charge $25 an app. Would they do that? Well,
see, they wouldn't do that because you're paying hundreds of dollars for Microsoft Office on the PC, And so,
Wouldn't it be
would they cut all their sales by giving that function? So it would have to be a scaled down, a drastically
Yeah,
scaled.
it'd be scaled down because, and also,
so-
I mean, I got to think here that corporations would still be paying for the desktop version because they're not going to just have all their workers behind iPads all day. You would get, I don't know. I think they get distracted rather easily that way.
Yeah, I think we'd end up with something pretty less functionality. Certainly less functionality.
But I'd like the ability just to make sure I don't get wonky reformatting with pages and going back the other way. That would be a benefit, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. Certainly, I've tried to use Keynote on the iPad for things that were created in PowerPoint, and there's a number of bad incompatibilities.
Yeah, everyone should just use Keynote. That's light years ahead of anything on PowerPoint's end.
Yeah,
anyway, we're kind of this little rant here.
You just can't share that with Windows users. So
yeah, that's a shame. Apple, that should be Apple's app for Windows. They should have PowerPoint or Keynote that just kind of show, hey, this is an awesome app that should let you see that, hey, this is why you should own a Mac, sort of.
Right.
Anyways, the last bit of Windows relevant news is Parallel Desktop 6 is now available, and it includes remote access for iOS devices, iPad included in that. So it's got Parallels Mobile. And what that gives you is access to any virtual machine running on your Mac. You can use any Windows application in your virtual machine, from Internet Explorer to Outlook. You can actually remotely start, stop, and reset machines so it doesn't disconnect when you do that. It's done over 3G if you want to, and it's just a good way to access Windows on your iPad, I guess,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they had a Parallels app prior to this for the iPhone, but it was really just kind of controlling your virtual machine, not really looking at it. And from what I understand, this Parallels Mobile will actually allow iPad to interact with the virtual machine that's running. So that's very good news. I did just upgrade to Parallels 6.
You did? Okay.
A day or two ago, but I have not had an opportunity to try this out. So I will. I'll probably be trying it out this next week, and I'll report back.
Awesome. Well, the final bit of app news is from my friend Michael Eskin that I did an interview with a while ago. He does a bunch of Irish instruments, and a new one is hit the App Store. It's Englantina XL. It's a 48-button English treble concertina for the iPad. So if you're one of those players or are curious about this, you can grab it in the App Store today. So just a little plug for that app. I think they're pretty cool applications that are... I like to jam out on my Irish instruments every now and then.
The thing I'm most excited about is that these kind of apps and using the iPad are potentially going to bring more interest to some of these, kind of non-mainstream instruments.
Oh, yeah, because they're hard to get a hold of, and they're expensive and all that weird.
Yeah, and there's some great music and some very unusual kinds of sounds and music that you get from some of these instruments that are just not mainstream. Mm-hmm. And I love that, these are being kept alive in the electronic age.
Yeah. I definitely agree, because my background's in music. I mean, it's like, I don't know what it's like. I don't know. We're kind of saving things that could have been lost because of technology, but instead we're saving them. I don't know. Yeah. It's pretty cool stuff. So I guess I accidentally lied when I said we're done with Windows for the day. We're out of the apps. We're now in just the weird, crazy use cases people are doing with their iPads. And this one is someone's running Windows 95 on a jailbroken 3.1 iPad. So, yeah. I guess it's cool. I don't know why. It's probably the same spec hardware. I mean, it's 1 gigahertz. That's probably the same speed as the old ones back there.
Actually, it's more than Windows 95 ran on.
Oh, so they'll be fast. They'll be your fastest.
Well, except that there's a fair bit of emulation going on, right? Because
that's true.
The chip in the iPad is not an Intel chip. But yeah, it's just like, okay, well, if you jailbroke your iPad in order to run Windows 95 or Windows
It's a show off
3.1,
thing.
why? And that seems like a waste of time in my mind. But
Windows
okay,
geeks rejoice. I don't know if
I
there are
guess.
any, but I'm sure there are. So, yeah, Windows on your iPad. I'm not going to do it anytime soon because I don't like Windows. So, anyways, the next one is another demo of one of those integrated keyboards and folio cases that many have been enjoying. The Kensington Bluetooth keyboard case for iPad is going to come out pretty soon, it looks like. And it looks pretty cool. So, yeah, I think we'll have a lot of options here. Is this folio you're more interested in than the previous ones we've been seeing?
Yeah, this is certainly interesting, and certainly you would expect that Kensington is going to make a quality product. It's $99, so it's not outrageous considering you're getting a Bluetooth keyboard with it. So I mean you'd pay easily half that for a nice case. So. So that's certainly of interest to me. I saw another one. I don't recall the company, but another one very similar to this that was only $69, and so I was actually looking into that. So, but yeah, I'll probably try one of these, if not multiples of these, as soon as I get off the dime and do something about it. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. The folks over at the Modu IR cases. I'm not sure if you have heard about those. They're the ones where there's different modules for your case.
No, I haven't been aware of that.
Okay, I'll send you a link pretty soon. But they sent me out their starter kit. Should have that pretty soon. They just started shipping them, so pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about this when I saw you add it to the show notes here about the Kensington, because it's interesting to think about, the different use cases here. Being somebody who travels on business frequently, this becomes much more useful for me and usable for me than, say, somebody who's using their iPad mostly at home, where I'd continue to use the Apple Bluetooth keyboard there. It's $69, quality piece of hardware, and imminently usable versus maybe a lesser quality keyboard. But having it in one thing makes it very attractive.
Yeah, it definitely does.
I was trying to type on
pull out the Bluetooth keyboard and
and even worse, I was actually trying to. I was on a long car trip and I was trying to get some done as a passenger, and trying to type in a moving vehicle with the on the screen, it's just difficult. I had to retype so much stuff because it would just be I'd be like 3 words down and realize that every one of them was mistyped. And
that's where you need the dragon dictation, John.
Yes, true, but it was kind of noisy too. So,
yeah.
But a Bluetooth keyboard would have made that, I think, a fair amount more accurate. So,
yeah. So the next story, I don't quite understand how they're doing this. Have you seen this and understand this better than I do? It's light panning in stop motion with the iPad.
Yeah. So really, there's 2 separate things here. There's light painting and there's stop motion, and the stop motion is kind of what these folks have been doing, and that is, they film a frame, and then they film another frame and another frame, and then they put them all together, right? Typical stop action kind of thing, stop motion kind of thing. But what they're doing now is light painting with the iPad, adding that to that. So light painting from a photographic thing, I've actually done this at night in like a setting. And what you do is the traditional thing is you go out somewhere and get some nice landscape kind of area. You set up your camera on a tripod. You open up and start to take your picture, and it's going to be way underexposed So you're going to have a very long shutter speed. So we're talking potentially minutes of having that open in exposing your film or exposing your sensor in modern times. And then what you do is you take a flashlight or some other light source and you like run around and light up different parts of the scene. And so for the few seconds that you wave your light over something, you're essentially painting it with light. So that comes in more than the rest of the area that's all dark. And so in one frame, you can paint several different places with light. And then when you get that picture back, you have a single frame picture with these different areas that are lit up with the light, and the rest of the art is kind of dark. And so what they're doing here is they've been able to essentially design these shapes that they then create essentially slices of, as if they were slicing it. They refer to it as like a CAT scan, but for anybody else, you just take your say your letter and you'd make slices out of it, and you'd get that profile, what that letter looks like in a cross section. And so what they do is they program the iPad to display each of these cross sections in sequence.
Okay.
And so they open up the shutter on the camera and they move the iPad as it is displaying in sequence each cross section. So, it displays the left side of the letter, and then they have moved it slightly when it displays the next slice and next slice all the way until they get to the right side. And so it's essentially painted because of the brightness of the letter in the iPad. They typically, I'm sure, are filming this in a fairly dark setting, is that they've now created in that one exposure, all of these slices go together, and they've painted whatever it was that they had cut up into slices. So they'll do this for an object, and essentially in doing that, they've created an object in light on that piece of film or that single exposure image, and then they start putting all these things together to make the video, which comes stop action. So so they
make more sense here.
So they might they might do a little robot or something, and then they'll paint that robot in one frame, and then they'll move the iPad to a different place and paint that robot again for another frame. And then when they put those two things together, it looks like there's a robot here, and then he moves over to there.
Okay, very cool. Yeah.
So it's an incredibly ingenious,
highly technical thing.
Yeah, well, an incredibly genius use of the iPad.
Right, because it's a big light.
It's a big light source that's programmable.
Yeah.
They've essentially programmed it to display these things in sequence.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean,
yeah. So
I'm not a light guy, but if I was an artist or whatever wanting to do that kind of stuff, it's like, wow, this is an awesome device to do that.
Yeah, and it's amazing their little video, because there are people standing around moving the iPad, and most of the time you can't see the iPad or the people. It's just pretty well done. These guys.
If you haven't seen the video, check it out. I found it on the unofficial Apple web blog is where I found it. It's from September 15th is the date of it. So
just the next search for light painting.
Yep. The next one is a random tweet that I saw from Sean King last week. NFL Red Zone guy is using an iPad, so you can use it in the NFL stadium or over light painting.
So
I'm not sure what the Red Zone guy is, but is that a TV show?
I don't know either. Actually,
okay. So yeah, I'll have to ask Sean. I don't know.
But show my my NFL lack of knowledge.
Yeah, the Colts are playing right now, I guess. So I hope they're winning. I don't know. So the future of the iPad is this next section we're at here. And MIDI frameworks have been added to the iOS that I saw this on iLounge. And this is a pretty cool thing because right now Pianist Pro will actually output MIDI So you can use it with Finale and things like that. But if it's a framework that anything can use now, I think this has huge potential for bringing music notation apps to the iPad and just all sorts of things. What kind of apps do you see making their way to the iPad now that MIDI's in the frameworks?
Wow, all kinds of ads. It's amazing to me, how much the iPad has been picked up and utilized in all manner for music related things. Not only, as we talked about before, playing musical instruments, but showing scores. There are connections for the iPad to different soundboards and equalizers and all kinds of other stuff for actual live performances. And this just adds to that. I think it shows that Apple has recognized that all facets of the music world have picked up on the iPad, and they're adding things that more tools can be utilized. So I see all kinds of professional MIDI sequencers and all kinds of sound mixers and things like that might utilize MIDI. Be great stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited about this because it's becoming more like a real computer.
Well, actually, it's becoming more like a real universal control panel.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's like hook it up to anything and you control it.
Yeah. AirPlay, core MIDI. Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. I mean, that's exactly what's becoming. So, along with that, Apple had a patent. I guess this is sort of along with it. Not really. But Apple had a patent that basically allows an iPod Touch, or I would think an iPad would, hook in this too, that would basically have an accessory transceiver that allows for such stuff as telephony, SMS, email, web access via cellular, Wi-Fi, satellite, or WiMAX networks. So any of the different networks to do this kind of stuff, which could potentially turn your iPad into a big giant phone, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, it does kind of go along this same path that the iPod Touch, the iPad, even the iPhone are being utilized to be control panels, the display for all kinds of things. And
even more interesting.
So yeah, it's now
the transceiver would be the thing that has your phone number info, right? So it beams it to your iPod Touch. You're at your desk. It's on your iPad now.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, from the display point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's. I think Apple's really grabbing onto this idea that these devices can be the display, the control for so many different things, and it expands outside of this device, all kinds of possibilities. So,
and a cool closing thought with this one is, it also mentions it can be used to access a second network. Say you have great AT&T coverage everywhere but your home, you can have this transceiver that has like a prepaid Verizon account on it for when you're home. You need to use that, and yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities that are opened up by something like this.
Well, even better is that it's the transceiver actually hooks into your hardwired phone.
Oh,
so
that would be cool.
I know a lot of people are abandoning hardwired phones, but that's because they want to use their cell phone all the time. Well, maybe the phone companies are going to kind of look at this and say, how cheaply can we offer hardwired phones? And if I could, walk out of the house, use my cell carrier, but I walk into the house and I'm, connected through a transceiver to my landline.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So with Apple, moving towards that, they're also moving towards liquid metal. They're hiring more engineers to work with liquid metal alloys. So they're moving ahead with this stuff, and I'll be excited when we see liquid metal iPads and iPod Touches that you can't see anymore because they're so thin because of this liquid metal. So I think it's exciting.
Yeah, it's a shame that they're looking for people with experience with metallurgy. Because I don't have any experience with metallurgy.
Did you want to become the liquid metal?
But I tell you that it just sounds very interesting, the work that they're going to do with liquid metal.
It would be a fun job to see what you're going to make incredibly thin or strong. I mean,
yeah,
that'd be cool just testing the stuff out.
Yeah, it seems like it's got such potential for, and Apple is, I think, really going to push the envelope of what you can use this stuff for. So
yeah, I'd love to see if they do blender tests with the liquid metal. Anyways, let's move on to the random article of the week, and that is someone did a speed test basically of an iPod Touch 4G against the iPhone 4 and against the iPad. And the cool finding is the iPad, guess what? It had the fastest boot up time. So that was kind of cool thing, that the iPad, even though it doesn't have as much RAM as the iPhone 4, booted up faster.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I can only assume that means it's actually running a little faster than in the iPhone 4 because it's the same chip now, right?
Yeah, same chip, less RAM, but no phone stuff in it.
Yeah,
Could
true.
The phone
there
stuff
is
be slowing the phone.
Well,
down?
there could be overhead in the phone.
Yeah, for booting up time, especially, right?
Hadn't thought about that, so maybe that's the downside there. But yeah, it's still very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move from there to. I got some thoughts about Amazon and their new ad. So they recently ran an ad that features the iPad and a Kindle, and this guy is outside reading, and he says, "How can you read?" to this girl who's on a Kindle. And the thing I have to take offense with is he has the brightness. Is it just me, or is the brightness down as low as possible on that iPad? Have you seen this video yet?
I have seen the ad, and I didn't think about the brightness. That could be one thing. You're probably right. Now that I think back on it,
looks as soft as possible. It's like, of course you turn up the brightness. I mean,
well, the other thing was, she's using sunglasses to read on her Kindle, and he's not using sunglasses to read on his. If he had some polarizing sunglasses on, that would cut a fair amount of the glare on the screen.
It would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, although he'd have to turn it into landscape to see it with polarizing sunglasses. But still, it's I have used the iPad, and as you know, I'm in Arizona where we have usually fairly bright sun, and I have used the iPad outside. It is not the best or most wonderful thing to do, but with some polarizing sunglasses on, it's usable. I
think Amazon took a cheap shot at the iPad, even though
they did.
The iPad is not a great outdoor device, but it can be used, and they put it
can, and it's like, okay, well, let's pick the one place where we absolutely have an advantage over the iPad, and we put that on the commercial, because we know that that's the only place anybody is ever going to want to read a book.
Yeah,
and they're only going to want only books, no surfing the web on the Kindle, but only books, and you're going to read those outside. So obviously the Kindle is far superior to the iPad.
Yeah, because you can only read books, right?
Well, you only want to read books, and you only want to read them in the bright sunlight. So, yeah.
Yeah, and along with that, let me there's this article on Daring Fireball I wanted to read quickly here. So this is from Bill Hill, and so when the history of reading on screens is written, it might well be seen as a series of footnotes to the iPad. Yes, we've had other ebook devices before now, and yes, the Kindle broke new ground with long battery life using the e-ink technology, but as I said in an earlier post, e-ink is essentially a backward-looking technology, too slavishly bound to emulating paper, and it's an evolutionary dead end. The iPad, with a crisp, bright, high-resolution screen capable of handling color and video, yet with acceptable battery life, has moved us out of the dark ages. It's the first ebook device I've seen that really feels like it's changed the world. I vastly prefer it to paper. As for his fondness for the Kindle app, here's what I wrote back on January 28th. As for Amazon, they might wind up delighting with this thing. Apple's in the business of selling devices first, content second. I think Amazon's the business of selling content first, the device second. At a world where Kindle hardware sales pale in comparison to iPad, the Kindle app might be popular for iPad that competes against iBooks is not a bad situation for Amazon. Apple is only selling ebooks for use on their own devices. Amazon's willing to sell ebooks anywhere. So those are some thoughts I tend to agree with, that e-ink it's not a forward-looking thing. It's something we're trying to stay with paper. Right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of good that people are looking at a variety of ways of, replacing the paper experience. I know that they've experimented with, display technology that you can fold up or roll up, and different things like that in the past. And I think all of that is good for where we're going in the future. But I don't think it's going to be, oh, well, yeah, I'm just going to, replace my piece of paper with this other thing that's a piece of paper, without the ability to, to see it in color, to play video on it, to, do all these other things with it that I want to do with it. So we need to look forward and drive technology to do something better than we've done in the past, definitely.
Yeah. And one complaint that I heard recently from a fellow podcaster about the iPad and its reading experience is its weight. And I just have to disagree with this. I might point him out, whatever. But he said he didn't like the iPad because when he's holding it, he holds it like this, out in front of him, like a paperback book. And I think the methodology you need with, or whatever you call it, with the iPad is treat it like a hardback book. How would you hold a hardback book? With the Kindle, yeah, hold it like a paperback book. But this is like a hardback book. It's a bigger, screen and all that stuff. And, hold it in your arms, not in your hand. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but I don't think the iPad's too heavy to read. And that's something that this other guy bought a Kindle just because, hey, it's lighter and I want to read my books like a paperback.
Yeah, I would say that the only time that the iPad is at all potentially not very comfortable to me is potentially in bed, and I should have the iPad pillow. Yeah. And if I had that, then it would be great. But don't have an iPad pillow yet. But
okay.
Still, I mean,
even before that, I just,
yeah,
it rested on my stomach or whatever.
Yeah, it's that's, you're right. You don't try to hold it like a paperback book. It's not a paperback book. But then again, as you say, neither is a hardback book.
Yeah, like those things are just crazy. You'll get tired holding those if you try to hold it out like this.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you just adopt ways. I mean, I've read paperback books where my arms get tired too, if depending upon how you want to hold it, or how you're sitting or standing or laying. But you just have to modify yourself for what it is. It's not that heavy, and you know what? Maybe you should get a little stronger. It'd be good for your your health.
As I say, hold it in your arms, not your hand. Use your whole, never. Let's move past this. Sorry, every once in a while we have some ebook rants and it can get out of control. So the next section is more iPads. And this is, the section where the iPad starts to dominate the world and, every other, company won't be able to compete with it because it's so amazing. So the first story here is refurbished iPads. The Wi-Fi models are now in the Apple Store. Online, you can save $50 on any of the Wi-Fi models, so you can get an iPad now for $450 before tax, which is kind of a cool deal.
Yeah, it's great that we're starting to see that. I mean, obviously we wouldn't see refurb models offered until there was a critical mass of iPads out there, but that's good news. I mean, a lot of people save, not an insignificant amount of money.
Yeah, you can get yourself
Apple
a
stuff.
Case and like a camera connection kit for the $50. So
I don't think you can get both of those for $50.
If you get a cheap iPad case,
Yeah, I suppose
a $20 case. I don't know if those exist. Probably not.
Not in the Apple Store.
Not yet, at least.
But be that
the
as it
VGA
may,
connector and the camera
$50.
connection kit. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, yep. And beyond that, it's going to be in all Best Buy stores. The iPad's evidently moving to all of them. So, evidently, it hasn't been in all of them. Now it is. So, that's cool. I don't know.
Well, and I've also heard that it's going to be in Target stores.
That would be huge. It's a different market, that goes into those. I think Best Buy and Target has a way different audience.
It does. But, they do sell, I think they sell at least iPod Touches, if not iPhones in Target. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool. And I hate to do this. Microsoft just keeps on popping in the news this week. And so we have another Microsoft story. Evidently, the Kinect, Microsoft thinks will sell more than the iPads. And to this I say, the iPad and the Kinect are nothing alike, and why even comment on this?
Well, I guess Microsoft's looking at anything that they can they can talk about, and quite frankly, I would not be surprised if they could potentially sell more in the first 30 days than iPads were sold.
There's more Xbox 360s
because they're doing
in the
is
market.
they're. Well, yeah, there's certainly a huge install base of Xbox 360s, and they've played up for 2 years this technology. So now everybody wants to have it. So, yes, everybody's probably saved their pennies, and they're now going to go out and buy a Kinect as soon as it's available. And if Microsoft has made enough of them, then they very well could do that. But will they still be selling 3 million a month 4 or 5 or 6 months after it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it'll be in it.
This Kinect thing. Who knows?
it could be, but even if it's successful, I think it will be an initial very large group that's sold, and then it will peter down into probably a much lower level of sales.
I think in the future it'll just be bundled, and that's how people get it.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, so they might say we're selling a bunch of Xboxes, which has Kinect in it now, and so we're doing better than iPad. So anyways,
but as you say, it's not like it's going to steal.
No, you're not going to walk
iPads,
around with your Xbox hooked into a battery and use it to surf the web.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy that iPad because I'm going to buy that Kinect because that's so much more useful. Not really.
Not really. So yeah, I had to mention that. It's like, wow, that goes under the stupid story of the week, I guess. But we'll have more iPads evidently. More suppliers are coming. According to Apple, they're looking to get some more touch panel suppliers to boost productions, and yeah, that's just another thing that Apple's doing. They're making more of them. So, anything to say on that one, or is it just kind of let's gloss over and go on to the next one?
Yeah, it's good, but not much to say.
Yeah, the next one's so we've got 2 more before we get into the focus topic here, and we'll try to get through these quickly here. The next one is the Best Buy CEO claims that the iPad is cannibalizing the notebook sales. I think I'm reading this right. Notebook, not netbook sales. By as much as 50%. Now that's huge. Do you buy this?
That is very huge. I don't have any numbers to prove them wrong, but whether it's notebook or netbook, it doesn't matter. I think what it's saying is that the iPad has certainly been felt. Its presence has been felt in its sales. So
yeah, it's like the Apple laptop that people have wanted for that $500 price point. I mean, it fills that gap in Apple's lineup that you want Apple product, you don't want to spend $1,000. Got an iPad now.
Right. And I don't have a reference to it, but Tim, did you see that they're displaying this new netbook kind of thing that has a screen that flips over to become a tablet?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen
trying
it.
to recall whether it was.
I remember seeing
I saw
something
a
like
picture
this
of it.
over at CES back in January of last year, and it still hasn't gone to market yet. It's one of those things you just take the screen off and it becomes a tablet.
No, this is different than that.
Okay.
This is different. I think it's from Dell, if I'm not mistaken. And what it is, instead of having like the traditional PC tablets that the screen like swivels around and then folds back down.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Essentially, what happens is that the screen is like within a frame. So when it's pointed in one direction, it's a regular notebook, but the screen itself flips inside that frame to point the opposite direction, and then can close and become a tablet. So
yeah.
It's an interesting little concept. It's supposedly more sturdy than the old way, and also makes for a smaller.
How heavy and
thickness.
thick are these guys?
They're supposed to be thinner and lighter than the traditional convertible tablets.
Yeah, that's not saying too much though, because those things are. I've seen them. They're the old ones are still heavy and clunky, I think.
Yeah, but
it won't be any iPad. Portability.
I think it's showing that people similar to the iPhone, where there's still a market for people to get a real keyboard with a phone, and they're not going to consider an iPhone. Well, now there's people that want a real keyboard with their machine, their computer, and so they're not going to go with an iPad.
Yeah, sure. And if you need the corporate stuff for Windows, I guess, So, yeah, I think it's interesting. We'll see more, different types of tablets, and that's what I want to see. I don't want to see a bunch of iPad clones that do a worse of a job trying to be an iPad because they're not iPads. So I'd rather see stuff that's different. I think that'd be fun. So the final story here is the iPad is coming. It's not coming. It's already there to Latin America and China. So those are two huge markets. And I saw the China, launch videos. It reminded me of back in April 3rd. It's like going back in time to a different land, this time in China. They're all cheering and, applauding for, the iPad launch. And it's kind of reminiscent of, oh, wow, it's a couple months ago. Did you get a chance to see any of the China launch videos or anything like that yet?
Yeah, I saw some of the stuff, and it looked pretty amazing. There were long lines, and it's definitely looks like it's going to be a hit in China as well.
Yeah. So if you're a new listener from China, welcome. I mean, we've been playing with this stuff for many months, so yeah, send your questions. I'd love to hear from you guys. And yeah, in Latin America, the countries are Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So a bunch of these, new countries, and that's exciting. More iPads, more places is always a good thing. Yeah,
definitely.
Especially in China, it's more of a closed market that they have to get approval from the government to do things. So, let's move from all the stories and stuff. Let's try to don't want to go too long tonight, but move on to the focus topic of the week. And last week, if you remember, we got feedback from someone that wants to use the iPad in photojournalism in that field. So we're going to kind of cover this with the apps and things that would be good to have. And the first thing I think we need to talk about here is you got to pick up a camera connection kit. That's going to be essential to getting your photos off your high-end DSLR onto your iPad. And is there any other, hardware accessories you'd recommend for photographers and journalists?
No, I think that's probably the essential one. One thing that you need to remember is that you're probably not going to do a lot with, like raw pictures from your high-end DSLR on the iPad yet. There's not really, not that it. I don't think
transfer supports it, right?
Yeah, but you're not going to. Yeah, you're not going to preview it. You're not going to be able to edit it. So, okay. So that's the one thing. I think the iPad probably has the horsepower to be able to do some basic stuff, but nothing really is available to do that yet. Hopefully Apple will bring out something like Aperture for iPad. But in the meantime, the intent is really, be able to preview your pictures and get some sense of what they're like if you're shooting in the high end kind of raw mode.
Are the
But more,
JPEGs good enough for publishing, you think?
some of them are. Some of them are. If it really depends upon how well you nailed the exposure. That's the big thing about RAW is that it gives you it's like a digital negative, and it gives you the ability to alter the exposure a little bit after the fact if if it wasn't right on. And the other thing is that you actually can usually get a little bit wider gamut. You can collect a higher number of pixels per, or not pixels, but a higher saturation number of colors per pixel than JPEG, and you're not going to get any compression artifacts or anything like that. So, but that's really for high-end guys, and a lot of the folks that we're really talking about are wanting to work with their lower-end digital cameras, or maybe they do have a DSLR, but they're not going to do a bunch of stuff in RAW, or maybe they are, but they're going to want to do something with the JPEGs that JPEG previews that come along with the RAW. So those are the kinds of things that you're really going to do with the iPad. In the capture part of it, and then there's the whole other of after that. Yeah,
let's jump into the editors. We got a bunch of them, and I'm not sure if we could. I mean, do you want to just pick out your favorite ones from this list? Which ones are worthy of talking about? I can just run through the list now if you want. So just run through the list, and then we'll discuss the ones that need discussing. So the list of different photo editors, we've got PhotoGene, PhotoForge, FilterStorm, Pixel Magic, PhotoPad, Camera Bag, Color Splash, Brushes, Adobe Photoshop Express, Crop for free, Photoshop free, Touch Retouch HD, Auto Stitch Panorama, and Camera Plus when it's back on the App Store. So those are the apps. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, so the first thing I want to say is that a lot of these are really designed for the iPhone.
Okay.
But they're very usable on the iPad, most of them. In fact, I would say that probably all of these are very usable on the iPad. There's a number of them that are probably go-to kind of things, and I don't know if you want to point out a few, Tim. But I would say Adobe Photoshop Express,
definitely.
And particularly since it's free, is a kind of like a mandatory. I pick out a lot of the free ones because I'm still going to do a lot of my stuff on a desktop computer, but for doing stuff on the iPhone or the iPad, you just want to be able to do some stuff quickly. So things like the crop for free is it's a great cropping utility, and it's free. Photoshop free does some great sharpening. There's also a paid version. It's not very expensive. I think it might be $1 or $2. Okay. And if you're doing it a lot, if you find yourself doing it a lot, then I would say get the paid version. There's also some different filters that are in-app purchase as well. The Touch Retouch HD, which is $1, is probably, I think, the best thing for doing any stuff with photos that you're going to want to do on your iPad. And really what that is all about is really removing those unwanted things from your picture that you have. And, Photoshop does this on PC or Mac, has gone really great with the ability to do this in the last couple versions.
Does it blur out things you don't want?
It uses some really sophisticated techniques to get rid of some of this stuff, and it does an amazing job for $1. I mean, it's like I would have spent $20 for this probably. Yeah. It's really amazing. So I would definitely recommend everybody should get that thing for $1. Auto Stitch Panorama, I use this a great deal on my iPhone, but I also have, loaded up pictures onto the iPad and use this there as well. And what it does is, as it says, it allows you to take multiple pictures and create a panorama out of them.
Yep.
What I end
pretty cool.
Yeah, what I end up actually using this for a great deal is if I'm at work and we have a conference room and we're doing stuff and write a bunch of stuff on the whiteboard, I end up taking a bunch of pictures of different sections of the whiteboard and putting them all together. So that works out really well.
Pretty cool. So what's Camera Plus? I know it's an amazing camera app. What's it all do?
Yeah, so Camera Plus has two kind of modes. One is a mode for picture taking, and obviously that's not really useful. You can't use it at all on the iPad.
Right.
But it helps you take pictures and makes picture taking better on the iPhone. But it also has a light table kind of functionality where you can bring pictures out of your camera roll. You can put filters on them and do different things with them, like some of the other editing thing. I think it's a great app, of course, because of some stuff that they did with that violating Apple's guidelines and trying to sneak around Apple's guidelines. They have been pulled. Oh, yeah. So if it ever comes back, I would recommend people checking it out and probably getting it.
I don't looking for it when I got my iPod Touch. It's like, I've heard a lot about this. Now I have a camera I want to use a bunch, and it's not here.
Yeah, it was pulled. What they had done was they had tried to say, hey, why don't we remap the volume control on the iPhone to be a shutter release, so we have a hard shutter release. And Apple said, no, you can't do that. So they actually, had submitted it. It was rejected. So that they then resubmitted it, and Apple approved it. And then it got around on the internet that if you used like the Safari browser and type this URL, it would be redirected to that app, and it would turn on that functionality. And so then Apple heard that and pulled them from the App Store. Rightly so, actually, because I mean, your app was rejected for this, and now you're going to try to sneak it in anyway. It's like, well, of course they're going to pull your app if they hear that you tried to get around the process that they just rejected you for. And Apple's pretty firm about not remapping buttons and things like that to confuse users.
Yeah,
frankly, I don't think it's
used for volume.
Yeah, but I actually have that version with that enabled.
Yeah,
and it's a very useful feature. It really is. I wish Apple would go back on their thing, because it only happens in the app, right?
Right.
So it's not like you're taking your phone call and all of a sudden you're clicking pictures,
Right.
So but Camera Plus, and it was an incredibly popular application. I mean, the folks involved with it,
they made gobs. Yeah,
they made a lot of money in a very short amount of time. I wish any of my apps could be 10th as successul as this app was before it got pulled from the store.
Sit down for about a year or two and just relax.
So anyway, those are the apps that I think are useful. You also had Color Splash, which I mentioned
that one earlier. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Basically, it turns your phone into black and white, and you just use your finger to say what parts you want color with. Basically.
Yep.
Is that how it works? Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then the top 4, I think, on here pretty much do the same thing in different ways: PhotoGene, PhotoForge, FilterStorm, and Pixel Magic. So I guess just look at their sites and look at all the UI stuff they do, and just pick the one that works best for you if you want that kind of app. It just does a bunch of different photo editing. But I think a lot of that can be done with Adobe Photoshop Express, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, and I think if somebody really gets into this, one, that most of these apps are very reasonable. So there's no reason why you couldn't buy 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And what you should really do, I think, is look at them and look at some examples of photos done with them, because each are going to have their slight advantages over some other app. But start out with the free ones and explore some of the others because they're cheap. And
if this is your career,
what they really do is some of them is really amazing for a couple bucks. So
yeah, definitely. So let's move out of those and move on to publishing platforms and delivery mechanisms for your photos and journalism stuff you're doing. So I think the first one's mail. If you're going to be sending, things to your publisher, editor, or whatever, you're going to use a built-in mail client. Do you know? I mean, how does this all work? Are you familiar with this process at all?
Well, yeah. I mean, each publisher or place that you're going to submit photos it might work slightly differently. So you might do email, you might have some other process for doing that, but certainly if you do use email, the built-in email client is going to work fine for you, and you just need to make sure that you're providing the original kind of size that the mail will allow you to do in 4.1 in 4.0. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a little more difficult under 3 before that. So, that's just the only gotcha, is to watch out and make sure that you're not sending some very, very small version of your picture to be published, because they won't get published.
So
give them all the pixels they ask for.
Yeah. And another way people can share their photos with their publishers is Dropbox. That's another way I was thinking that, share a Dropbox link or share a Dropbox account. That's a good way to do it. And then you can use Pages if you want to actually be writing text and creating this, a full article that way. You could do that, share it via PDF, Word, or a Pages file. And then, of course, WordPress is on the iPad. So what are some other ones that you discovered when you were researching this end of the photojournalism bit?
Well, so besides just like sending pictures out to people, there's the whole thing of being able to show people your pictures. And that's where I think the iPad really accelerates or excels. And, there's, I've got 3 here, but there's probably, a dozen more. Collections for iPad for $3 is a portfolio kind of app. Padfolios and Portfolio for iPad are both $15. They're much more professional kind of portfolio app. Allows you to do a lot more customizing and whatnot. But these are going to be apps that you can really use the iPad and showcase your pictures on that screen and make them look their best on that screen. So if that's something that is of interest to you, then look for these things. Out of that group, I think I haven't tried any of these on the pad. I've just kind of looked at their features and whatnot. I think Portfolio for the iPad seems to be maybe a little bit ahead of the others. But if you want to go on the cheap collections for iPad at $3 is probably a good start.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, those are some ideas that we had as far as, if you're a photojournalist, that's how you can use it. Just some odds and ends here. You also take notes with your iPad, record interviews if you're doing that along with your photos. You can mark locations on the map for future shoot locations. And so there's all sorts of other things you can do besides just manipulating photos with your iPad. Were there any other odds and ends you thought of?
I didn't. I would just say that, if anybody's interested in this, they should, put aside, a couple hours over the course of a week or so and search through the apps on the App Store, because there's just a ton of them. And granted, a lot of them do the same kind of thing, but there's also some unique stuff there that you might get some advantage from. There was one thing I wanted to ask you about, Tim. I think you're probably a little bit more of a expert on Dropbox than I am.
Yep.
So how easy is it to to publish stuff from the iPad to Dropbox. I know there's a lot of apps and a lot of ways of getting things from Dropbox to the iPad,
Right.
but I'm not sure how many of those go the other direction.
So, say you have photos in your photo gallery, which most of these apps plug into, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. So once you have your photos in your photo gallery, you can just simply, let me jump on an iPad that has internet right now.
So it's really like using the Dropbox app to pull stuff out of your photo gallery, your
Dropbox
camera roll or whatever.
What you do is simply, there's this little plus button, and you can say add, upload photo or video, and it launches up your photo albums. And you just simply click on the photo albums, and there you go. It's very simple. And I think it'll do the original quality, too. It won't downgrade.
Yeah, so I think the important point here is that a lot of these editors and things like that will let you do a couple things after you edit. One, like email or save to your camera roll or your galleries. And so that's what you want to do. You don't want to be searching for the ability to put it in a Dropbox from that app.
Right.
You want to just save it back to the gallery and then use the Dropbox app to get it off the iPad.
Yeah, plus when you sync your iPad back to your Mac, you'll get the photos sunk back to, iPhoto or whatever your photo tool is on the Windows end. So that's a good way to make sure you're just, have them backed up, outside of your iPad. So
right.
That kind of wraps up. Any final thoughts as far as the photo stuff for today?
I think that one, I think that this was a kind of a challenge to do this in a week. There's just so much to think about in the area of photography. I hope we did it justice, and I hope we helped out some folks. Certainly, I think, if you're into photography, do some exploring on your own, because there's just a wealth of stuff out there. Mm-hmm. And the iPad can certainly help you in your photography. Yeah, and perhaps we'll revisit this topic in a later date. But yeah, and if you're a photographer using the iPad, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at iPadPossibilities@gmail.com, or you can call in the 209-542-iPad. And in a future show, I'm actually going to have Victor Kakiao of the Typical Shutterbug on to discuss how he uses the iPad as a photographer. So I'm very excited for that one, because he's an actual photographer. I shoot photos, but that doesn't make me a photographer, right? So I'm very excited about that. So great. So yeah, cool. So before we get to the picks of the week, I shared my thoughts on 4.2 on the last episode. Do you have any thoughts that I didn't touch on that episode, or that you want to share today? So I am a developer, and I have tried out the beta. And so I guess I would just say that it is a beta. So folks, if you can't get it, don't fret too much. Don't freak out. It still needs to be. Don't feel like you're missing out on a lot. It's there are it does some things fine, but most of the apps I try after a little while crash. Oh really? I've not and had that it happen. Does a variety of things. Yeah. So and maybe it's because I'm trying to do real work with it and not just play around. I was impressed that We Farm and We Rule for iPad already background. Yeah, well, and there's a lot of stuff that it's showing a potential. It's showing the potential of multitasking on this device. I haven't used folders yet, but I know that that's going to just make it a whole lot easier to find stuff on the iPad. So I think all those things are great, but it is a beta, and it's the iPad itself hasn't crashed, but I've had a lot of apps that crash when I try to do things with them. Okay. I've even had iBooks crash. Oh, really? So the only crash I had. So when I tried to install something, but I was trying to import a PDF into iBooks, and and then crashed. So,
Yeah.
So it is a beta. It's going to be a phenomenal thing when it comes out, but don't get all uptight about the fact that you can't get it or you can't
wait a
get
couple
it yet,
months. Don't pay the. I mean, you can, but I would not recommend you to just. I mean, I did, but I wouldn't recommend you paying $100 to be a developer just get 4-point beta. That's kind of cool.
No,
I've done some
no,
printing, but save your $100 and get something else. But
it's
cool thing.
you'll be much happier to get the release code and not play around with the beta.
Yeah, the printing's very cool. I actually printed a movie ticket the other night with it. It's kind of cool. It's like, oh, this is awesome. I can't wait till everyone has this. One cool thing that appeared on the web the other day was AirPlay. Evidently, it works with Netflix, Safari, and other apps. Anything that uses the built-in way that, if you have that Bluetooth. I noticed this that when I was using Bluetooth, instead of Bluetooth, it gives you this little AirPlay little logo, and it's streaming Netflix audio to what do they call them? AirPlay devices. And I'm imagining once the Apple TV comes out, we'll be getting video playback from Netflix and perhaps iTV. And is this kind of an exciting thing?
Oh, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. I think that will be one of the yet another killer feature that will separate this from some of the potential competition.
It brings unofficial apps to the Apple TV through standard ways of doing it. As far as getting content on there, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it will be interesting. In the coming weeks, we'll probably hear people trying out the Apple TV with the beta on the iPad, and we'll start to get an idea of what that will be all about. That should be very interesting.
Yeah, the coolest thing here is doing live TV stuff like Slingbox or iTV and streaming that to your Apple TV, because that's a way to get real cable on your Apple TV. And then Safari was interesting. It's like it's kind of it's not an app for video, but it does it. It's kind of cool. So yeah,
well, it'll be really interesting when somebody is able to hack the Apple TV and start running stuff on there, and then using AirPlay to get it onto the iPad.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for the Apple TV. I don't have one pre-ordered or anything, but I'll probably get for Christmas, I think. If not sooner, we'll see. Things happen. So from there, let's kind of close up the show with our picks of the week. What do you got for us this week, John?
I just lost it, so why don't you go first, Tim, while I look for it?
All right. My pick of the week is a very simple one. It's Find My iPhone. And this is the first time I've ever really used this feature because I kind of stopped using Mobile Me about a year or two ago because it just didn't do enough for what I needed it to do. So I've switched over to Gmail and all the Google services. But the reason it was $45 on eBay. It's amazing. You can find these good deals on eBay for like $45. I got Mobile Me for the sole purpose of having Find My iPhone, because I'm thinking this is going to be a great way to give me a little bit of ease of mind of having so many iOS devices now. I think I've got, I don't know, 4, 5, I forget. I have a lot of the iOS devices. Anyways, having Find My iPhone means I don't have to worry about where these things are. If I lose it in some drawer in the house, I can have a beep and tell me where it's at. And so if you're starting to collect these devices like I am, Find My iPhone is just it's worth $45 a year, I think, for me to have it. So that's my pick of the week. Have you had any experience with Find My iPhone, or are you a Mobile Me guy?
Yeah, I am a Mobile Me guy, and I've used Find My iPhone a number of times. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great service, and I'm really glad that they've now put apps on different iOS devices so that you can actually, if you're on the go, find the device that you've lost or left behind or.
It's the coolest thing. You can send passcode locks and wipe the device and have a beep, and I don't know. It's kind of cool. I kind of wish they just bundled Find My iPhone with anyone that owned an iOS device could have that feature for free. And if you want Mobile Me, you can pay for it. But I don't know. That seems like something that would be a nice thing that Apple just gave you. And I don't know. Do you think? Do you agree with that,
I agree. Or at least offer the Find My iPhone as a separate thing, like for I don't know, $15 a year or something.
$20 a year, $25 a year.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing.
Something. But
I got the box in the mail or whatever. They have updated to include synchronizes with iPad. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. They've updated the boxes. So, anyways, enough about Mobile Me. What's your pick of the week, John?
So my pick of the week is Secrets for iPad.
Okay. So
this app is kind of like all those little tips and tricks for iPad. It's 99 cents. I actually haven't bought it yet. I think I will. There's a light version, Secrets for iPad Lite, which is free, which has about 15 different little tips in it. And I wanted to try it out and see how good the tips were, and the tips are good. In these 15, I probably knew at least half of them, if not more. But I'm maybe a little bit more into the iPad than some folks. So I'd recommend folks take a look at the light version, and if you find yourself using it or looking at it and are interested in it, certainly 99 cents is not a big deal. Apparently the real version has a lot. It has at least 77. There we go. 77 tips and tricks. Probably the 15 that are in the light version, but still you're buying for $1. You're buying, another 60 tips and tricks. So, there's things like it'll have to be rewritten for 4.2, the quick volume mute, adding a web page to the home page, street views and maps, different things like that. Switch to widescreen. So a variety of little things that help you figure out some of the real intricate little options within the iPad. And I think it's a good thing for a lot of folks.
Yeah, very cool. That's something I haven't seen before. I might have to pick that up and see if might be a good quiz show. They should turn that into the quiz app. It's like, do you know how to do this? I don't know. That'd be fun. So,
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of quiz material here.
Yeah. So feedback. If you want to send some feedback our way, you can do that by emailing me at iPadpossibilities@gmail.com or calling in the 209-542-iPad. That's 4723. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your questions. If you're a brand new iPad owner, what are your thoughts about it? There are new iPad owners out there. I saw at Panera the other day, someone was walking in with a brand new iPad box. It's like, ooh, that's kind of cool. So anyways, send your feedback, 209-542-iPad. And then to support this podcast, go out and visit gadgetfreeway.com. They are the sponsor of this podcast, and they have a lot of great products. And the cool thing with their site is they actually build some custom things in-house. They have an iPad pillow that's built for the iPad that it helps you use your iPad in bed. Helps you read the book in bed, as we were discussing earlier. It just makes that a much better experience. It's great for just surfing the web on, with your iPad in bed. It's designed exactly for that. They also have what I get comments on every day from people that, use iPads, the iPad case bag. It's, I think they call it the iPad bag. I call it the iPad case bag. It's, basically a bag that you can use your iPad while it's still in its bag on your shoulder, whatever, and it makes your iPad more like an iPhone. You can just pull it out and use it whenever you want to, and it's a pretty awesome bag. So check that out at gadgetfreeway.com, as well as all their other stuff. So I want to thank them again and support this show by just visiting them at gadgetfreeway.com. And until next time, this has been the iPad Possibilities Podcast with Tim and John, and we'll talk to everyone again next Sunday night. And until then, just have a great iPad week.